What's up, y'all? This is the Adapt or Die podcast, a podcast that explores new and relevant ideas for the purposes of self-growth and helping you live a more fulfilled lifestyle. My name is Armel Tala.
And my name is Ben Smith. We're two university students pursuing our own journeys of self-growth with the hopes of sharing our findings with you.
Welcome back to another episode of the Adapt or Die podcast. In this episode, we're going to be talking about memory, but specifically why we forget. And this one I've been really intrigued about ever since Ben told me this one thing. We don't know if it's true or not, but I thought it was so cool, and it's because I had just learned a concept called like recursive calling when you're calling upon it's a CS. We're not even gonna get into it, but he explained that your memories are not that reliable because can you say it?
Okay, so we were talking, and I basically told him that every time you were remembering an event, you're not remembering the actual event. You're simply remembering the last time you remembered that event, and the last time you remembered that event is you remembering the time before it, and it's like one big you remembering all of your remembrances until you get back to the final event. But I'll be honest, I have no idea if that's true, so this is an idea.
It might be true, it might not, I don't know, but it was a really cool concept, but it's what inspired this episode. So yeah, honestly, it was so interesting that I was like, let's do the science. Let's talk about the science of memory and forgetting.
And today I want to make a distinction. We are focusing on false memory. So forgetting is obviously not remembering things that actually happened. Today we're talking about things like remembering things that never happened and why that happens. So that's what false memory is, remembering things that never actually occurred. And so this is a really cool a super cool idea to me, like the fact that this happens to us a lot. And I want to just quickly explain the big idea of how we remember things so we can have a good idea of why false memories occur. So two psychologists from Cornell, their names are Charles Brainerd and Valerie Reyna. I don't know if I butchered their names or not. I'm sorry if I did. They came up with a thing called fuzzy trace theory. So, and that explains how we remember things. And basically we have two types of memory. So the first one is called gist memory. And it basically is us remembering like big ideas. Okay, so it would be like maybe like if you go to a baseball game and you felt like very happy, like it would be your memory of you being happy, like you had a good time, like whatever. On the other hand, we have verbatim memory. And so verbatim memory is like exactly what happened. It's literally like you can picture like the old dude behind you like snarling at you after like you actually bumped into his daughter. Like you can like clearly see that picture in your face. That's verbatim memory. So it's like verbatim memory would be very like sensory things, like maybe you remember the taste of a hot dog, like whatever it is.
It's very specific.
It's very specific. It's something that like you clearly remember. Okay.
Yeah.
And then the gist memory is like just kind of like some big idea. Like it's more of like a theme or like a feeling. It's not isn't like an actual like substance, if that makes sense. So, and this is going to be really important for understanding why false memories happen. Okay.
False memory. Okay, so you're telling. So our brain remembers things in two ways. So very specific or very, like.
Yeah, very
summary.
General.
It's very summary.
It's like a summary exactly of like the events. So we have so when we talk about verbatim memory, so we all know this. Like you can just do this like simple test. Just close your eyes and try to remember the like what you're looking at. So if, like try to remember the room you're in, like literally every detail. You'll find that you won't even remember half the things in the room, like at all.
Yeah.
Within seconds, and we know that that's pretty like, that's widely known. But it just goes to show you that verbatim memory, that like the picture you have in your head, whatever feelings you were feeling, it disappears very, very quickly, almost in an instant. And then all we're left with is our gist memory of an experience. So we're left with however we felt about it, whatever ideas we have about the event, right? So I want to take this example to really like flesh out this idea of verbatim and gist memory. So imagine you're at a baseball game, right? And let's say that you order pizza. Now, being an American, I don't know why you'd order pizza at a baseball game because we order hot dogs. But
hot dogs are nasty. I'm not gonna lie to you.
We can debate on that. There's plenty of documentaries on that stuff. It low key, like, have you seen how they make them?
Nah, they're just
You don't want to
nasty.
know.
Nah, they're
Yeah,
just
no.
nasty. Better to stay away. But so remembering what do you remember?
Oh yeah, so imagine that like you ate a pizza, right?
Okay.
But you think you ate a hot dog. Okay, so let's say this happened a week ago. You went to a baseball game. You ate a pizza. You think you ate a hot dog. A reason, like why, an explanation for why you might think you ate a hot dog instead of the pizza would be because hot dogs are synonymous with baseball games. Like you go to a baseball game, like you have a hot dog. Like it's kind of an American thing to do. Like it was, that's what we do. But you had a pizza and you don't really remember eating the pizza or the hot dog. But when you think back to like your experience, because you don't remember the actual verbatim memory, like you have no real recollection of eating the pizza, you just infer that you had a hot dog based on your just memory of the whole of the experience. Does that make sense?
That's something you bring up because it's interesting. And it's like this idea that I feel like, so we have a lot of gaps in our memories, right? So like you said in verbatim and summary, you'll think of something, you kind of just get that general gist. You're like, okay, so this happened at this time. The dude hit the ball at this time. Home run was hit at this time, and in between this time, I was eating pizza. But I found that like when I was doing some research, that people like error occurs in people's memories when they're trying to fill in those gaps. When they're like, wait, what might have happened? And you make, when you make that assumption, like yesterday, I lost my keys. I lost my keys for some chicken wings because I was hungry. I was hungry and I was like, yo, let me go get some chicken wings. And I'm retracing my steps back, being like, yo, where did I lose it, right? And then so it's like, and I realized like when they said this, I was like, I had to make a lot of assumptions when filling in the memory. Felt like one trying to trace my steps back, because it's like, yo, what happened at this time? And you make these reasonable guesses, and if you guess wrong, then you're just like you fill in that slot in your memory that then like reinforces an error.
Exactly. Like, so, and this is where like just memory and verbatim memory, like understanding these is really helpful in understanding false memories, because exactly what you said, like we use our just memory to kind of infer like what might have happened, right? So when you're probably using your just memory of like, okay, I'm coming back from the comp sci building, that's where he studies. He's there, like he lives there.
Yeah.
But
computer science, only place.
If you would think, okay, I'm coming back from the comp sci building, and you would say, all right, what's my usual route, right? You probably don't remember actually walking that entire route, but you thought like, okay, well, I usually take this exact same route every day. So then you would use your just memory to trace that route. That doesn't mean that you actually took that route. It just means you're using your general like idea of what you usually do, your just memory of how you like go through the world, to try to find your keys.
And someone in the live brought up an actual interesting point. They said it makes me question the how valid testimonies are, and that's another big point of why this research really applies a lot to like court cases and things like that.
The criminal justice system,
witnesses, and always saying
absolutely.
I was listening to this thing where it's like, again, on the idea like you're filling in guesses and stuff. So like when a lot of things happen, right? When an event happens and you have a witness and they see the event, before they even get in the courtroom, and before they're even able to have time to explain explain the event that occurred, they would have told the story to either like their lawyers, their friends, their family, and throughout each time they're telling the story, they're probably filling in gaps, because now they're telling the story to someone else. They need to explain, especially if they're telling their lawyer, you got to give a lot of details. So then they end up having to fill these gaps, which makes their testimony a lot of the times very shaky.
Yeah, and when they fill in those gaps, so like because the mind is so like imaginative, and we can really like, you can imagine, really imagine if you're at the beach, right? Like you can imagine the sun like hitting you, like you can hear the waves, like you can feel the breeze, like you can imagine all of those things. So when you're filling in gaps, you will fill in all of those sensory gaps as well a lot of the times. And so those false memories that you're filling in, because your imagination is so powerful, it will feel totally real, like completely real. Like, and that really, it's kind of a huge issue in like the criminal justice system, because witnesses are so unreliable.
Yeah.
And I was gonna bring this up later, but
might as well.
Yeah, there's the statistic. Psychologist Julia Shaw, she did a study, and basically what she did is she got like hundreds of college students, and she tried to see how many college students she could convince either had a traumatic accident, committed a crime, something involving the police, where like let's say like they actually broke their friend's leg and they had to call 911. Like
Yeah.
something like very like they should have remembered. She
Yeah.
tried to see how many false memories she could create in those students. And so she actually found that after 3 interviews of like fairly like suggestive like leading questions, she was able to convince 70% of participants that they had either experienced a traumatic accident or committed a fairly not a low level crime but like a crime that never happened. And this is a very like it was a very thorough study. Like she talked to their parents to make sure like this never happened. Like she the week beforehand like she knew like about their past and all that thing. But it goes to show you like 70% of these people of the students thought that they themselves committed some like did something as a child that they never did. Like that's
Yeah.
crazy. You know what I mean? Like how is that even like to me that's like wow, like my memory is so unreliable that I could literally think I did something that never even happened.
No, yeah, and that's why people you write it down the case, but like bringing that up about leading questions that affects memory so much. So there's this book called the Seven Sins of Memory, right? And so there's like he broke it up into 2 types of sins. Oh, and just so for people to know, like the book The Seven Sins of Memory: How the Mind Forgets and Remembers is by Harvard professor and psychologist David Shader. And so in the book, he splits up memories. He calls it the 7 sins, right? And he splits the sins into 2 categories: omission, which is simply like you're forgetting things and what like that. But then the second one, which you brought up, was like by commission, which involves memory that doesn't exist but may be false, skewed, or contains inaccurate details. And one of the sins was suggestibility, which is memory errors can also be created by suggesting something about a person's memory. So if someone's like hinting at you like, yo, remember that time when you it's like, oh, it's like a question. How about this? A better example: if someone's asking like, did you see a man on the street at night, like last night, right? There's a lot of suggestions you're making there. One, you're assuming that they saw a man, right?
Right.
2, you're assuming that it was a man. 3, you're assuming that it was at night. Like, so there's
True.
a lot. So when you're asking those questions,
you
it really
provided
matters
a lot of details for all they had to do was say yes.
for
You know
them to
what I
like, and then all those details. If they had gaps in their memory at one of those points,
they're just gonna fill it.
they're
Like
gonna
that.
fill it in with that and be like, oh, I mean, if he's asking that, then that probably means it did occur. So like,
And I don't have any data on this, but you can like totally just look this up yourself. Like there are so many false confessions out there, like, and there people totally believe they did something like murder, like they believe they like killed someone, like, and it never even happened. People went to jail for 20, 30, 40 years and they didn't get out till like DNA evidence proved it wrong.
yeah,
And so like it's crazy that like how suggestibility it was really linked to like investigators like suggesting they're like they would take them into these confession rooms and investigate them, question them for like 8 hours, and eventually they would be like, yes, I did it, but they're really just dehydrated, like they didn't have food, like they were just being asked all these questions, so they're like, yes, yeah, and then boom, they're in jail.
Yeah, because at that point you're just like, I don't want, bro. Like you're asking too many questions. Like I can't remember all that. And
you just break down.
And then those people have motives too. People have motives, which like, so that's like a big thing to remember. Like that's why they don't put so much weight in testimonies from witnesses, just because, like we're gonna keep emphasizing right now. Your brain is trying to be efficient. It's not trying to remember the BS. It's not trying to remember any of that. And like as we talked in our previous episode about just what was even look at me now. I'm even forgetting what our previous episode was on. Like we talked about the science of habits and how your brain wants to be efficient. So therefore, it's gonna try to automate things. It's gonna reduce. It's going to cut out memories that like it just doesn't need. Because there's this concept too of it's actually really interesting of like how quick your brain forgets. It's
crazy.
But it's also like it's like you'll forget things. I don't even have an actual metric, but like it's like there's also this idea of like plateau where you'll forget a lot of things really quickly. Like just so your brain's like, oh, we don't need this, like we don't need that, we don't need that. But then it's like it's gonna plateau and just be like, okay, these base memories is just enough for you to like kind of recall things.
No, I think I found something. They did like it was a science institution. Anyways, it was like during the presentation, she like had the audience look at 2 different pictures, and they it was this exact identical picture, the same exact picture, and there was a space of I think 42 milliseconds in between, and they had the whole audience identify whether or not the picture was the same, whether it was like zoomed out or in, and I think 70% of the audience got it wrong. And there's a gap of 42 milliseconds. So that shows you like how quickly you forget something, because it only took 42 milliseconds, which is just like a slice of a second,
Yeah.
basically, just for you to forget like the scale of a picture. And it was huge. Like it was all, it was in the background like a huge projector. Like, and they still like they had no idea.
I think that really does have to play on the fact that like I'm not gonna lie to y'all. Crash courses, that boy be packing information on that mug.
Yeah, can we just take a second to like realize if you put a crash course video on like half speed, it would still probably have more information like per minute
Yeah.
on half speed than most regular videos.
And
like
then-
he'd be zooming.
And
on
it
the
really
mug.
is like he puts kind of like an hour 30-minute lecture into 12-15 minutes of just like content. You're like, wow. But on a crash course about, it was the crash course on psychology for remembering and forgetting. And I think it, like I was saying, of us, our memory, it plays a lot in the fact like our memories are a series of interconnected associations that link all sorts of diverse things as bits of information gets like, okay, so
Wait, yeah,
so
say
let me
that
break
again.
down,
I
let me break
kinda-
that down.
I
So
kinda-
our memories like interconnected memories, like it's all, let me read the interconnected associations, right? If you think about
Okay.
like how you trace back your steps, it's like the reason why people tell you, hey, you need like trace back, is because the way your memory works, it's like it'll store maybe like one big thing from the event, right?
Uh-huh.
Like, I went to a baseball game, and
Okay.
from there it's
Oh, okay, it's like
it's a cue. It cues the rest of the
Right,
memories that
right,
are
right.
connected to it that might be weaker, and be like, oh, at the baseball game I saw,
So it like attaches a bunch of memories onto like a base
like the-
memory, and it's like
yeah.
a chain.
almost
of?
I wouldn't say a base, and I don't want to say like I
Yeah,
didn't
yeah.
I didn't dive too deep into this, but like
It just attaches it onto another memory.
yeah,
So it's like a
they're
chain
all,
of memories.
yeah, they're all kind of like
linked.
connected, and some are just, it's like almost like nodes, and some nodes just have much greater weight, are just much stronger.
You
so
like remember certain
those,
things better.
but then it allows
Okay.
you to cue, and a lot of memory has to do with like, and some parts of memory does like with retrieval cues too, like things that you remember, like when you're at the tip of your tongue, you're like I know that when someone just says like it starts with an A, and
Yeah,
you're like,
yeah,
that's
yeah.
that word, so
Or like you see like those crazy the people can remember like unbelievable amounts of like numbers or like letters or like, and they use like how does the word, it's like mnemonics, like I don't know how to say the word, honestly. I
Yeah.
can't even, like, it's spelled like really strange, but you know what I mean, right?
Yeah.
They use like visuals and like random like acronyms just and stuff
to
to remember like
really
very like
long, complicated.
unbelievable, like I think the world record for like someone could name they could list like all the pi decimal places to like a few thousand decimal, like that's crazy. Like
Yeah.
I can't even get to like 6.
Man, and it probably started with him going like 3.14, and then 4 was connected.
Exactly.
So the whole chain of it's crazy. It's crazy.
I think one interesting topic that I found was the idea of photographic memory. So I don't know if you like hit on this at all, but photographic memory, if you look it up, it doesn't really actually exist. It actually it is in kids, but it fades as they get older sometimes. And what this is so interesting to me, they actually use photographic memory as a cue for underdevelopment in kids. So if you have a photographic memory, it actually signals underdevelopment. Like it signals that you're actually less intelligent, generally speaking, than the rest of your peers. And the reason for that is because you're not able to use your gist memory. And what your gist memory is essentially taking the gist of all of your experiences, right? And what you need to do for your gist memory is you need to have make meaningful connections. So this is like really, so to give like a very good like explanation of this, they did a study. Basically all they did, they read lists to kids and adults. So they would read like a list of animals to kids. They'd be like lion, bear, koala, tiger, whatever it was.
Yeah.
They found that kids, they could not, when they were hearing like all those animals, they never thought, oh wow, I'm hearing a bunch of animals. Like they did not, they could not make that connection actually. Like that connection doesn't form till like 11 or 12. Well, adults, they make that connection almost immediately. They're like, why am I hearing so many animals? So then when the kids repeat the list of animals, because they'd list like 10 of them, and they'd be like, all right, can you repeat any of the words? And the kids would, when they repeated them, they never really repeated wrong animals. Like they would always hit them. They either didn't remember them or just repeated the exact animal. But adults, because we have the connection, the gist of like what the list was, we would say a bunch of animals because we didn't actually remember the animals themselves. We remembered the main idea of the list.
And in part, And a part of forgetting, which is actually really interesting, like you're bringing up now, is that like a retrieval, and also I also want to say like efficiency too, like the brain being. We're probably gonna do a whole episode on the brain because it's actually insane how like smart and like efficient the brain is. Because I feel like, and you're saying like, because people think if you have a photographic memory, you must be a genius, right? Like you think it's more of a genius, but you saying that like,
But like
it
the
suggests.
reason, yeah, the reason you're not a genius is because you're basically only relying on your verbatim memory. So you're
Yeah.
only relying on like your exact like picture of whatever happened, but you can't make any like connections between any of your like. I mean, you can, but like
But,
not
like,
to the extent that you should.
You can
be.
like summarize
Right.
it, and
So
that's
you have no gist memory. You have no. You're not really drawing on experiences. You're drawing on like singular like things, and you can't really make the connections. Which means like and it's hard to quantify intelligence, but a lot of intelligence is taking connecting ideas and using those to find like a creative
finding
problem.
patterns so you can like simplify
right.
things. Like they always say like some of the smartest people, like you really understand a concept if you're able to explain it to like a fifth grader.
Yeah.
That's always one of the things they always say, which is I think that alludes perfectly with like memory. Like I don't know, we might be making connections here. We might be smart, but but also on the idea like. So the way I'm thinking about this right now, like the connections that are coming to my mind is, so our brains are efficient, right? It doesn't want to it doesn't want to store too much information, to get the gist of it, get the summary. And that's most of the times. I don't want to read a 5-page essay, a 5-page paper sometimes. Give me the gist, give me the abstract, give me the summary.
Yeah.
Some of my teachers might not like that, but like, yes, I read the abstract when I need to. But so in moments like that where it's like, okay, so the smarter brain actually makes those, summaries. So but it's like, why do we forget? And it's like a part of why reason people like have false information or forget things is because like the retrieval process.
Yeah.
Like there's 3 parts that people usually when you're trying to recall memories. There's 3 different ways people forget, and that's usually through we fail to encode the memory. Meaning like we just take it in wrong. Like you hear something.
Or we like don't take it in at all.
Oh yeah, or you just don't take it in at all. Like we only notice like a fraction of what happens, or we just fail to notice anything. Right. So if you fail to notice it, you're not gonna remember it.
Exactly.
Then we fail to retrieve it, and this is kind of I'm gonna lead to eventually is like you miss those retrieval cues, right? Like you don't have those retrieval cues. You didn't associate anything, so you just fail to kind of like retrieve the memory. And then the last one is like storage decay, as we discussed earlier about how like your memory we just naturally forget things. Like it happens. Yeah. It happens. But so when it comes to like being older now, like we're older, or we make the gist of things, but we still like will forget things just because since we're older, we have a lot more information in our mind now. So then like the retrieving process can fail because like it's just cluttered with so much other information. There's a lot of interferences when we're trying to recall those memories.
One of the interesting things I found was that as you get older, because you have more experiences, right, you're going to start relying more on your gist memory of just like the general like idea of things, because like you can, and it's much better for decision making to rely on your gist memory, because if you take the gist of a lot of stuff and you can immediately make a nice decision, that's going to be very beneficial rather than like taking like a verbatim memory of like having to like synthesize each,
and then you're having to end up making those connections later.
Exactly, and you're spending a bunch more energy, like so it's much better to use your gist memory, but obviously like as you get more memories, you're using your gist memory more, and that also means your verbatim memory becomes you don't use it as much, which is why older people, they're always like, oh, I'm so forgetful, like and the reason like that actually like it gives a really good explanation for like why as we age we forget things more, because we're using our gist memory and making a lot more inferences and like pattern recognition.
Trying to save as much energy as possible.
And we're not trying to rely on like the exact how the exact picture of what happened. We're relying on our past experiences to tell us what the most likely thing that happened. And a cool thing about that though is that in court, kids are always
the best witnesses.
Well, they're regarded as the worst witnesses.
Oh,
like
really?
Kids will always be like, if a kid, if a 7-year-old comes up on the stand and he's like,
wait,
he did that.
Time out. I just wanted to like say like I thought you were really gonna say kids are regarded as the best witnesses because they're not their gist memory. They're
So no, I'm getting like, so for the longest time we have regarded them as the worst.
Oh.
But they actually are the best. So as far as like the details, like the very like details of what actually happened, think about like go back to like the animal example, like that's a very like low level like connection to make with animals. So if they can't even connect like different animals together, how are they supposed to connect to high level things like, maybe like gender stereotypes, like emotional drama between like the family, like, connect like very.
But they're able to know
very,
like a lot of things that happen.
They will probably remember exactly what mom and dad said. They might not know what it means, but like their testimony is actually far more, not far, like statistically like more accurate than adults every time.
No, it's like,
it's crazy.
Think about like when you talk to a kid and you go like, yo, how was your day? And then they tell you every single detail, and you're like, yo,
how did you even remember that?
Yeah, it's like I don't care about every single detail. Like, that's actually really interesting now that seeing that, like, since they're not able to make those connections. Their just memory isn't there yet. It's like that's why they're able to tell you every single thing, because they're not making connections out of it. They're just living, experiencing, and like trying to remember as much as they can.
And they don't develop that like that meaningful connection making till like 11 or 12, and then it obviously keeps developing. It's probably still developing in us as we speak. I think it probably develops lifelong.
No,
like
it's lifelong.
Your whole life.
The brain is as we thought before. A lot of people thought the brain was like once you get to a certain age, it was done. Like your brain doesn't evolve, grow, but the brain is actually very malleable. It changes a lot as we age and grow and things like that.
Neuroplasticity lasts your entire life, pretty much.
Lifelong learning, y'all. Lifelong learning.
So if you're listening to this
podcast, you're a lifelong learner, and we're hitting on the topic why your memory sucks. So hopefully you can not rely on it too much. That's really interesting though, and I want to also go back on like the encoding information.
Okay,
though. When you're talking about a lot of times when you're like taking in information, I just wonder like what we don't try, like our brains don't try to take in everything though
at all.
It's weird, right?
Yeah.
So like our brain is like, yo, okay, so you're in a room, you walk in, like I can't remember what maybe my teacher was wearing on that day and stuff like that, and so like trying to recall that memory is just gonna be boof. It's just gonna be boof.
Nothing. Yeah.
So do you know anything about like just why like we decide to just cut out so much information though?
I mean, I think it probably goes back to the end.
What's your thoughts?
This is my thoughts.
What's your thoughts?
I don't know, but my thinking would be back to the energy thing. Like if we collected every single like data of information, like think about like is the color that your friend was wearing, like the color of his t-shirt, is that important? No, like no one really cares. So it's like when I think about it from like an evolutionary standpoint, it's probably much better, much more energy efficient for like humans to only focus on the important things, like predators, or people, or like danger, right? Because that's how you survive. So if you're taking in everything, like the color of the plant you passed by 20 minutes ago, like does it matter? Like you're just wasting energy.
Realize that like fundamentally our brains were made to do such simple, like not like surviving is difficult, like physically it is difficult, but our brains was required to just do like simple brain act. Like we weren't having to come up with solve intricate math problems and blah blah blah. So our brain is designed in a really way to be like, let's be as simple and as efficient as possible. And now that we've evolved into a society that just like so much information comes at us, school, then you have the internet, you have you have all this stuff, just like all this information going in your brain, that now our brain is like, yo, this is way too much to take in. Like we're just cutting out stuff at this point and everything.
We're like, it's so much information all the time. Like we live in the information age between, like you just said, social media, school, people are telling us things all the time. Y'all are listening to this podcast right now, hopefully remembering everything, but probably not, to be honest, because that's how memories work,
So that raises the question, what is the real function of memory?
Oh, yeah, so I almost missed this. We always, I kind of always thought of memory as being, like, I remember the past. Like, my memory is to remember the past.
Yeah.
But it really is to use our past experiences as a way to make decisions for the future. And you think about that and you're like, okay, well, like, that's pretty sensible. But then think about it again, kind of going back to that fuzzy trace theory of like gist and verbatim. And it makes more sense for us to rely on our gist memory, because if we're relying on our past experiences to make future decision making, like just the general ideas of everything, we're going to make, again, decisions that are much, probably like much more efficient, right? And they're probably better for us in the long run, because you're using so much information of just like the general gist of what you remember, rather than trying to recall like every single time that like something related to a decision you're about to make happened.
And I think you brought this up, like why memory was actually like so important was because people like who have amnesia, it's not amnesia, what's the disease that where you just can't remember
Alzheimer's,
Alzheimer's,
dementia,
you're like you can't, like I was like, so because I remember I said, I was like, yo, why would it matter if they can't remember? Like, if they can't remember, you can still, like, move forward and do things, right? Like, you can, but
I mean, like, if you think about it, like, how, like, so when you're thinking about where you're gonna go
yeah,
to school, like how you, like your route to take to school, like what do you use?
yeah,
Your memory. You have to remember like how you got there the first time, and then
Mhm.
that's reinforced over a bunch of times, right? So it's like if you can't remember anything,
Like, you can't
how
do
can you
anything.
do anything? Like
That's
you
that's what
literally
crazy
like
to me. I was like, what do you mean? How can I do anything? And then to actually think, this is just, again, the brain is crazy. To actually
is
think, like,
wild.
if you can't remember, like, because I was thinking, like, what do you mean you can't do anything? I was like, he can remember to eat. But I remember we were doing the thing when we were recording about habits. I remember, like, eating is actually habitual. Like, our brain
Yes.
has to the process where it remembers to do. Like, you've eaten so much, it naturally remembers how to do it. So, like, if you can't, and I don't know if this is like applies to Alzheimer's. I bet most people can probably
No,
eat and
yeah.
stuff. But maybe there's like cases where it's like, yo, like, I don't remember how to eat. So they're like, you're literally, each time they're having to like teach themselves how to like eat over and over. Like, if that's
Wow.
actually true, if that actually happens, like, that's insane.
There's an element of like muscle memory. There are a lot of
Oh
things
yeah,
like,
muscle memory
and
as
there's
well.
some things like you like they've eaten so like
Much.
think about
That
you
it's
eat
just
3
ingrained
times a
in your
day. Yeah,
muscles.
like you would like it's pretty
Guys,
hard to
I
forget
thought,
how to eat.
no,
But
that
like
was that would
that
have
was
blown my mind.
that would have
Like,
blown my mind too.
but I mean, they might just forget, but their muscles just like, yo, I gotta eat.
There's
I don't know. But you said something about like tying shoes as well too, which is like,
I mean, people like it's obviously you've tied your shoes a lot, but like it's possible that you could forget if your Alzheimer's if it develops bad enough. Like, how would you know how to tie your shoes? Because it takes it's pretty hard for a
Yeah.
5-year-old to tie their shoes, and like that's because they've never done it before.
yeah,
So if you don't remember how to tie your shoes, then like it's not easy to just figure it out. Like it's not like that. Like to us it sounds very
Mhm.
like simple, but like it really is. Like you wouldn't be like, oh yeah, let me just put this over here and then like shove this string through here and then boom. Like
so memory is important because like all of this is to help us make decisions for the future.
we need memory to make decisions for the future. So that's what memory is for, and that's why we use just memory instead of verbatim memory. And then going back to false memory,
Mhm.
that's why false memories exist, because we use just memory, and just memories are basically just using like the inference of
Mhm.
like the general ideas of something. And if we don't remember, we're probably just gonna implant what the most likely detail or situation was there, and we'll actually we will totally think it's real. We'll like I said earlier, like every you'll remember every like detail about it, and it will feel absolutely real, but it's not, and that's
Yeah.
so crazy to me.
That's actually insane, and that's probably why, like, in history, like, I mean, one, that's always why they say like history matters, because we need to know what happened in the past in order to make better decisions for the future. But then also, like, we need to make sure we write that information, that we actually have like the most credible,
So we
and,
remember
like,
it.
so remember accurately. So
Yeah.
we remember it accurately. We're not over here filling in gaps, being like, I wonder when Nelson Mandela died. That's a peek to the next episode, y'all. The Mandela effect, which is a crazy concept, which we're coming up to the wraps. We're gonna wrap it up.
Yeah,
here,
we're gonna
but
wrap it up here soon.
to kind of hint at the next episode that we're recording about, it's gonna be about the Mandela effect, and just kind of how, like, one, I would say personally, the Mandela effect itself, like, just the effect, it's cool. It's really cool. The theories that come with it, pretty dumb.
Well,
pretty dumb.
Yeah, we'll explore it more.
We'll explore
But,
more, but to hit on this last topic about like misinformation effect, did you do any research about that?
I did not do anything.
That's actually crazy, because the misinformation effect is like a phenomenon that describes how memories can change and become false due to exposure from misleading questions, information, or new memories. So again, if your memory is not solid, right, and you're having to fill in these gaps, and you hear information from someone else that's like, yo, you know what I'm saying, like, I heard, like, this, I'm sure, bro, I'm sure, like,
and I'll just fill it in as my memory.
yeah, you
even
just be
though
like,
I
oh,
have
okay,
no idea.
yeah, you're just like, you kind of remember it shaky enough. You're like, maybe like the Berenstein Bears, they'll do one. It's like, if people back in the day, people heard like, yo, no, it was like, it's Berenstein, like Berenstein. They're like, yeah, I mean, that sounds right. That doesn't, you don't really question it. And you tell people that. Maybe you ask them a leading questions like, hey, do you remember if it was like instead of them being like, was it Berenstain or Berenstein, they say, yo, remember the show was called Berenstein, right? And you're like, you don't really remember. You just in there like, yeah, it could be. But again, that's all just a hint to the next episode, y'all. Any last points? I think
this is really a cool fact that really plays off what we just said. you know those people who can like remember like insane amounts, like they can remember the weather on like any day of the year ever.
Yeah.
Or, like, have you seen that video of the dude where he like flies in a helicopter over like the London skyline, and he redraws the entire like all of London, like draws every single building.
That's
Have you
crazy.
seen that video?
No.
Okay, well, there's a few people in the world who have what's called highly superior autobiographical memory, okay, which is people like that, where they can remember very specific parts of like aspect of life. So for him, it would be like spatial things, I guess.
Yeah.
And then for a lot of people, it's the weather, or it could be, you know, they're basically savants at memorizing certain things. Even they did experience, even they are prone to false memories. Like it was very easy for them to implant like a false weather day, like convince him it was a bright sunny day instead of a rainy day, even though he literally remembers it because he has he has a photographic memory, and his memory was still subject to false memories. So that just shows you how like unreliable our memories are in terms of like remembering the details. I thought that was like really cool.
Yeah. So what you can pull from this, it's whatever you want it to be. We're here to provide information and kind of explore. I thought this topic was really interesting. I was like, yo, I know we're big on self-development, but I also exploration of new ideas and concepts that are just not really explored in a lot of classrooms, or that might not even be talked about between you or your friends. But now we've given you hopefully something to talk about, and just know, just because someone says something, and unless they can back their source, doesn't always mean it's right.
Yeah, and also just because you remember it doesn't mean it's right either.
Does not mean it's right. But thank you again for joining us in another episode of Adapt or Die podcast. All our resources from this episode is going to be down below. Check it out if you want to. And, stay easy. Peace, love, and positivity. It's been the Adapt or Die podcast. Peace.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the Adapt or Die podcast.
For more information about us, follow us on Instagram at Adapt or Die, or find us on TikTok at AOD Podcast. You can also watch the podcast on our YouTube channel at AOD Co, spelled AODCO.
We hope you enjoyed this episode, and as always, continue to explore and adapt.